The government wants to make it faster and easier to install rooftop solar. It's launched a review into what it calls a red tape nightmare, with some installs needing up to 8 layers of sign-off before panels can be switched on. Solar advocates say this is a no-brainer, but warn that residential solar alone won't solve New Zealand's energy challenges. SUPA Energy CEO Luke Blincoe is with us now. Morena, Luke, thanks very much for being in here.
Morning, Tova.
So this review, it's a good move?
Yeah, look, I'd say it's a no regrets kind of action. There's nothing bad about improving the efficiency. Anything to improve the efficiency, transparency, and speed of getting rooftop solar happening is positive. But there's some irony that we're doing a review to remove red tape. It's an industry that's done a lot of reviews. I'm sure the advisors to the industry, the consultants, will be rubbing their hands together.
Yeah, it's like having another technical advisory group on top of a technical advisory group, a review on top of a review. What are some of those biggest delays in getting solar up onto our roofs?
Yeah, the processes are pretty arduous. And they're quite rightly a bit of repeat work that can be streamlined, and some of the networks are doing that. But really, the delays are in the processing of applications for things. There's a reason to have some of these processes around safety. I don't think anyone's advocating for less guardrails around safety, but absolutely less rework, wider open sort of access to data. A lot of these processes can be improved by getting more broadly accessible data at the network level. So actually, before we even design a solar system, we can see what the appropriate assets are for a site. We can see what that site can hold, and getting really, access to that data, that would streamline the process.
Yeah, right. But some of those hurdles that I just mentioned, do they include things like roof strength, that the roof will actually be able to hold up the solar? That seems like something we wouldn't want to get rid of.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the structural assessment process, so there's a series of assessments that need to be done. I think you don't want to get rid of those.
No.
These are safety-based assessments. Can the roof hold the weight of the assets you're putting on there? Do the electrical lines able to take the capacity of the assets you're going to install? Those are all totally legitimate processes to have, but having concurrent processes would be faster. So being able to do some of these things at once, reducing the rework, allowing probably qualified technicians and experts to do more of the job themselves, rather than assuming only a network owner can actually sign stuff off. Gotcha. So there's lots of streamlining that can happen.
And this isn't the great kind of, it would be good on individual level. You might save up to $1,000 on your power bill each year, but this isn't the great kind of panacea for solar, is it? We need to be thinking much bigger.
Yeah, look, if you look at the broader issues of the New Zealand energy market, more rooftop solar and residential is positive. It's fantastic, but we need to do a lot more than that. I think you could also argue that we're actually doing quite well relative to previous years in residential. There's over 10,000 homes have put solar on in the last year. We've only put about 1,000 systems on businesses in New Zealand in the last year.
And
those are big roofs that can make a big impact on the energy system. We really need to make sure the incentives for businesses and government buildings even are really strong to drive more uptake on those bigger buildings. Yeah,
because surely the government should be leading by example here. All of those rooftops across all of the bureaucracy in Wellington, surely they could put some solar panels up there and cut down on the taxpayers paying for their power bills.
Absolutely, and they've got the lowest cost of capital to do this stuff. So the government can leverage their balance sheet and do it on their own buildings first. I think that's a totally legitimate ask.
Is that something you'd like to see one of those political parties, major political parties, going into the election campaign with? We're gonna chuck solar on all of our government buildings.
Yeah, I think it's almost a no-brainer.
Yeah.
That if it's good for other people, it's got to be good for the government. We do a lot of work with some of the government ministries. If you want to talk about red tape, try getting a solar system put on a government roof.
Yeah, try getting up there at all, I imagine.
Yeah.
And what about the business incentives you mentioned? What would they look like?
I think probably less discrimination between where electrons are coming from. At the moment, there's quite good incentives for residential homes to export solar during peak times. When the grid needs it, that's fantastic. But businesses should get exactly the same value for their electrons if they're exporting at the same time. So the incentives need to be at least even. And I think part of the concern around how solar and battery rolls out is the need for orchestration and coordination. You need to make sure that solar and batteries that are distributed are delivering the value where and when the grid needs it. So that's a legitimate thing, but also it's the prices that will drive those outcomes. So making sure that the pricing regimes actually incentivise the right outcomes.
Okay, interesting stuff, interesting food for thought, and things that I think we'll put to those major parties over the next week or so. Thank you very much for coming in. That's Luke Blincoe, the SUPA Energy CEO there.